This is a video on factoring cubic functions. There are two ways to factor cubics. One is by using formulas. If you're lucky, you have the sum or difference of two cubes, and then there are some very helpful formulas you can use to factor. The other way of factoring is by grouping. This should look familiar to you, as this is the way that we learned how to factor quadratic functions when a was not 1. Now first, let's talk about the two formulas. The sum of two cubes, here is the formula. I won't bother repeating it to you. You may want to pause and make a note of this particular formula. This is the second formula, the difference of two cubes. You may want to pause and write down this formula. Now let's look at an example. Suppose you have to factor x cubed minus 27. Well, you're in luck because 27 happens to be 3 cubed. So you will make this observation. You will notice that this is the difference of two cubes, x cubed and 3 cubes, and determine that you can apply the difference of two cubes formula. Now you'll notice that I color-coded A and B. In this case, my A is x and my B is 3. And so I'm going to apply the formula by writing down my a squared, which would be x squared, and my b cubed, which is, x cubed, and then my b cubed, which would be 27. And then I'm going to break apart my a's and b's according to this formula. Now, using the color coding, I think you can see how this works. When I'm done, I have a factored cubic function. Now, sometimes you have to be careful because the function to the right, the x squared plus 3x plus 9, in this case is not factorable. I can't factor that anymore. But sometimes you'll end up with something that can be further factored. So you want to make sure that you have factored as far as you can. So always be checking that. It's also very helpful to memorize your perfect cubes. I would really say up to 16 cubed, but in a pinch, at least up to 10 cubed. It will really help you to recognize things like 2 cubed is 8 or 8 cubed is 512. There are only so many variables or values that we can give you cubed that you might recognize, and so it will help you work a lot faster if you know your perfect cubes. Now here are a few for you to try yourself. Remember that you are just applying the formula, the sum of two cubes or the difference of two cubes. So you may wish to pause now and try these for yourself. Now we'll go on to the grouping method. Now there are just three big steps when you are factoring by grouping. First, you group your polynomial into sections. And then you find the greatest common factor for each group or section, and you factor that out. Last, you identify the common term in each of your remaining groups, and you factor that out. Now, that's a lot of words, so let's go ahead and look at an example. We start with y is equal to x cubed minus 4x squared minus 3x plus 12. This is a cubic function in standard form. So our first step was to group our terms together. And so ours are already grouped together pretty well, but I want to show you using color how I am grouping my terms together. So I grouped together x cubed and minus 4x squared and minus 3x, and plus 12. I grouped those together. Next, I'm going to factor the greatest common factor out of each of my two groups. Now, I can factor out x squared from x cubed minus 4x squared. They both have factors of x squared. And the greatest common factor between negative 3x and 12 is negative 3. So I factor that out. And again, I use colors so you can see what I factored out of what. Next, I identify the factor that is common between the two groups. The factor that is common between the two groups is x minus 4. And so I factor that out. If x squared can be multiplied by x minus 4 and also negative 3 is multiplied by x minus 4, then I can factor it out of both terms, and that is exactly what I do. And I end up with x minus 4 times x squared minus 3. Those are the factors of the cubic function that we started with. Let's try one more example, and then I will cut you loose to practice for yourself or note any questions you might have. Here we begin with the cubic function x cubed minus 5x squared plus 5x minus 25. So I'm going to group terms together like so, and I have used color to show you what I am grouping together. Then I'm going to identify the greatest common factor between x cubed and 5x squared, and it turns out between those two it's probably x squared, so I factor that out. And in the case of 5x minus 25, my greatest common factor between those two is 5. Okay, now I notice immediately that both of my groups have a common factor of x minus 5, and so I keep factoring. Now I factor out x minus 5, and I end up with x minus 5 times x squared plus 5. I hope the color coding makes it clearer to you. If not, please note any questions that you have and see your Algebra 2 teacher or any other Algebra 2 teacher with your questions. And now here's an opportunity for you to practice. So try these by yourself now. Have a great day.